So, welcome to the Mulligainz-Fitness podcast. I'm here with Matthew, the absolute legend from the Mulligainz Method. One of the things I start the podcast off with, Matthew, just because social media can be a little bit fickle. I'm insulting everybody here that's listening to the podcast. And people don't like listening to you until they figure out what you've achieved, because then they're like, fuck, he's achieved this. I can do something like that, or I want to know how to do it. So that's how I like to start them off. And I know you might be like, oh, I don't want to give myself a big head. But when it comes to fat loss, fitness, improving your overall health and lifestyle, there is none of that, because you face your challenges and your challenges are equal to everybody else, and everybody else has different challenges that they might perceive as harder, as easier. But it's just you coming forward with what you've struggled with and what you've overcome. And I think everybody has these to different degrees and stuff like that. So I'd love to hear your journey so far. So give me a little bit of information on maybe where you were before we crossed paths, the things that you've achieved since. Yeah, let's go with that.
So I'll say that this isn't my first time in the whole weight loss exercise sort of thing. I don't want to say that I'm very knowledgeable on it. Like, there's always obviously something more to learn about, eating well and being healthy and, exercising. But this is like my third time trying to go and lose weight, if you want to go and say it like that. So when I was probably how long? I was probably in my 20s, early 20s. I had a medical condition, so I wasn't sleeping well. I worked at Macca's, so I got free Macca's all the time. So I was kind of eating that, always eating and just never really doing any sort of movement, never doing any sort of exercise. And then I ended up getting really heavy. So my weight at that time was 130 kilos. And then I wanted to go and kind of make some changes about my health and my lifestyle. So I ended up seeing a personal trainer, different personal trainers. It wasn't just a one-off thing, but to kind of condense it down and end up sticking with one personal trainer that my friend suggested to me. And I ended up getting down from, I think maybe my highest weight at that time was probably maybe 115 kilos, I'd say. And then I got down with this personal trainer, 90 kilos. But then a major life change happened where I ended up moving to another state where I didn't know anyone. So obviously I had to go and cancel my personal trainer and everything, and the whole major upshift of, life. And I ended up putting on weight again after that. I never ended up actually going back to exercising or eating well because I just didn't have time. And also because I ended up becoming a full-time student, I just didn't have the money as well. So I ended up adding on the kilos again. So I ended up going all the way back up to probably 115, maybe 120. And that was when I was maybe around 25 or 26 at that time. And then after I graduated, I ended up just kind of feeling, I just want to go and lose weight again. I don't know, I just had this whole sort of thing in my mind. I just want to be, better looking or whatever it was. And then I ended up seeing another personal trainer again. And this one was kind of more of a focus to where it's a bit more of it was like a boutique-y sort of gym. And, it was with a personal trainer that I saw 2 times a week. And I ended up going down for, I think, like I said, I was around 125 kilos. I went all the way down to almost 80 kilos.
Fuck.
So I saw them, I ended up seeing them, and I think that was probably within a year and a half that I was seeing this personal trainer. I did the whole thing with the macronutrients. I literally weighed everything. That's when I started. I knew about macronutrients, but this one was a lot more sort of involved. And so I ended up, 80 kilos. That was fucking insane. And then I ended up having another major life change. I ended up moving house. I couldn't afford the personal trainer again. So I was just like, fuck, I can't go and do this. And that is now kind of coming into the past year and a half now, where I was just like, I have to go and make another change. So I ended up going from 80 kilos right back up to 130. So now at my current point, I think I've, been with this, the Mulligainz for probably since earlier this year. I've now come down from that 130 to, I think my current weight's around 95. But in general, I like to go and say to people like I've lost 25 kilos, you know? So
Crazy.
yeah, that's my journey, is that I'm not familiar with this. Like I know my way around the gym, I know way my exercises, how to measure things and everything like that. And it has become second knowledge. Like I know what, to kind of look at and stuff like that. But like I said, always having additional information, additional experiences to kind of like build upon that has just, especially now recently, has just given me a lot more in-depth knowledge. But yeah, that's currently my
Crazy.
journey. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think first of all, that goes to prove the point that knowledge a lot of the time isn't the issue. And I think emotions and life changes and loads of different things are. And I think that that's a point that a lot of personal trainers kind of just skip on. That they think that because you don't know about calories and a calorie deficit is all that you need to know. And I think that that's where a lot of people are left behind, and maybe where you can be left feeling stupid, or that there's something wrong with you, or that like there's something XYZ, whatever it might be, is wrong with me because I'm overweight, or and I struggle with my weight when my emotions get high, and maybe there's something that I don't know. Maybe carbohydrates are the issue, or maybe fats are the issue, or maybe
Yeah.
like it's just, I think it's easy to say that it's a knowledge issue. Like a lot of personal trainers would still think that to this day. But when you realize there's so much to weight loss, and we were just speaking on the call there before I started to record, and we were talking about exactly that, about how in the future, like if lifestyle changes happen, that what might happen is a little bit of regain will occur. And do you know what? In that situation, you've learned throughout the last couple of months, and I batter it into your guys' heads about not beating yourself up or being harsh on yourself with that. And so I love that you can go back and look at your journey, and in that there's no self-blame. It's like, well, this occurred because I had a life change, I moved state, or I moved house, or this happened, and that's okay. People would see that as an excuse. That is not an excuse. That is how weight loss or weight gain can occur. In different people, it's approached differently. When emotions are higher, or when we lose our routine, it's a difficult thing to get back. And what makes it harder is because so many of us are hardwired to beat ourselves up over it. Like so many of us instantly, it's like, oh, I'm useless, I'm fat, I'm lazy. Because one, social media, film and TV programs would say that, magazines from back in the day would say that, and it's fed into us to make us feel exactly like that. And even in, like, I would bring a lot of it back to school for me, because it was where I was so harshly bullied for my weight. Of like, in school, is if you don't fit in with the norm, you're wrong, or you're bad, and XYZ. So when you're looking at other people's bodies, and maybe your body looks a little bit different, that, oh, there's something wrong with me, or I'm shit, I'm useless, I'm not as good as these people. And actually, it could be just that you've gone through a lot of hard shit over the last little while. And once we remove that self-blame, things become easier to change. And as we were speaking about just before I clicked record on the call, I think that that's where, Matthew, your biggest change is like the self-criticism has now started to disappear. It's not, doesn't mean that we don't give a fuck about certain things, or that you don't care about yourself, or X, Y, Z. It's like, no, you're just able to look back at things with curiosity and be like, oh, you know what, maybe I can change this week, or you're just more self-aware. And that's from multiple avenues, I'm sure, not just fucking online coaching with myself. It's from being very introspective yourself, asking questions as well, asking the difficult question. You had a brilliant question even before this podcast started, so I'm gonna bring that up in a moment as well. But I think removing that self-blame is something that's huge. And would you have found that in yourself over the last little while?
And I think and like you said, it's not just through the online coaching, it's through lots of trial and error. And, for me personally, now that I kind of see this in a different light, but it's just like I went out and sought, professional help, and I think sometimes either whether or not people, if they're able to, but like for me, I'm just like, I feel like I'm such a big advocate because I had those sorts of very negative and very self-hatred, self-talking about myself, about who I was as a person. And I saw myself in a different way. And, it's interesting though as well, because when I started seeing my therapist as well, and this was like probably a year and a half, 2 years ago, he said to me something really interesting. He's like, oh, we're going to go and do this thing called cognitive behavioral therapy, where it's essentially you're rewiring your brain about how you kind of talk to yourself and how you kind of see yourself and everything like that. And I remember when I first saw him, like I went through a couple of different psychologists as well before I saw this one. And so it was like 2 or 3 different ones. And I was like, when he said that, I was like, oh yeah, cool. But in my head, I'm like, fuck off. You are insane. How can I go and rewire my brain thoughts? Like this has been with me for like 20 years. I don't think that's going to happen. I'm like, nah, mate. But I'm like, in the session, I'm like, yeah, okay, sure. Let's go and try it. But it's insane because then now things take time. and it's a very slow, sort of steady sort of work that you need to put into it. But it's only just when you talked to me and you approached me, to go and do the podcast and shit, I was like, oh my God, what am I going to talk about? But then that, which made me start thinking about this whole, sort of mental health aspect. And when I started reflecting on it, I was like, holy shit, since that first session with my therapist, my brain thought patterns have really actually changed. Those things that I thought was difficult, the self-hatred, the negative self-esteem, all that sort of stuff, slowly disappeared. And whether it was because I was actively catching those thoughts or I was trying to steer myself away from that, who knows? But it was probably like a combination of all of that. And yeah, it's really interesting because now, like, I'm not saying that I'm perfect. There's still obviously a lot for me to go and improve on, but I can say that I'm 100%. I see myself in a better light than I ever did, like even 2 years ago, let alone when I was in my early 20s. And one big thing that I see myself is like, the physical aspect as well. So, and I think I would have mentioned this to you in my check-ins though as well. But like, I look at myself in the mirror now, and even though I've still got, a bit of a tummy, I've got a bit of love handles, whatever, I find the things that I've gone and improved on in the past year. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a bit stronger in my, my arms. Like, oh yeah, I've got, good defined legs. I'm looking for the positives instead of focusing on the one big thing, which is just, my gut. And I'm just like, you know what, it's like, I'm happy with that, and
Well,
I can tell you though, 2 years ago, I would not have done that.
because when I seen you posted a picture in the group recently enough, and your arms, I was like, this motherfucker has more defined arms than me. I'm gonna get sacked off here as the coach if I don't start lifting weights. So it actually inspired me. It actually inspired me to start lifting weights again. Not only that, but you also had a post. This would have been a good while ago. This would have been before we even had the app, I think. With your leg press, and I was like, this fucker is leg pressing way more than I can. How am I supposed to coach him on this? So I was laughing. But it's funny. It's funny that, like, I suppose the journey in that builds so much confidence when you start to see your physique change and you start to see like the strength coming up, and that can really improve your confidence with yourself. Because even though it might only seem like a 20 kilo dumbbell, going from a 20 kilo dumbbell or a 10 kilo dumbbell or a 5 kilo dumbbell to a 6, it means much more than that. It's like, I'm better than I was yesterday. There's feelings attached to that or something, and it builds that self-empowerment of like, Jesus, this sounds really silly, but if I can go from a 5 kilo dumbbell to a 6 kilo dumbbell, I can go and talk to someone I've never talked to before. Or I can do something. It's almost like if I can do this one difficult thing, which when you think about how silly it sounds to say that is difficult, it is, and it's hard. It's such mental torture. But I think going back to the therapy that you're talking about there, I am a massive advocate for therapy and how much that it can improve your overall health, not even just mental health, but I think, like, if you lead with your brain, your body will follow as well. And I think it's a huge aspect that people skip out on, and isn't talked about enough. So even there, where you're talking about the cognitive behavioral therapist and saying that you went through a couple of them before, I think that's also important to kind of highlight, because a lot of people will start therapy and be like, oh, that doesn't work for me, or I didn't really enjoy that one. But it's almost like a coach as well. And all coaches are different. So people listening to this podcast might be like, that Ocean fella is a bit of a fucking idiot. That's okay. I'm not your person. Everybody isn't meant to like me on this planet Earth. The same as you don't like certain people, that's okay. If everybody isn't supposed to be your best friend, but what you need to do is find someone that you trust. But it also takes time. So like, even with my therapist, the first time I went in there, it's art therapy is what I would do. A little bit of cognitive behavioral therapy, but art therapy, where you like draw a picture and the therapist will ask you a question about the picture almost in a way and kind of get feelings and thoughts. It's crazy. And sand tray therapy is another thing where you like put things in a sand tray. This sounds crazy. And every time I say it, I'm like, it's a little bit embarrassing saying this stuff to everybody. The first time he made me do it, I was like, this fella is smoking grass. This guy's smoking grass. He's nuts. I don't know what's going on. But then after a little while, I was like, shit, this is actually working, because he's getting me to talk when I can't talk to anybody. And as you said, I think when you become more self-aware and when you become more aware of your thoughts, feelings, it allows you to be less self-critical. And that's probably a lot of where your journey has come from. Because if you think, like, I just thought of this little bit of an analogy when you were kind of, when you were talking. It's almost, imagine you've seen someone in a shop screaming and shouting at somebody for maybe not giving them something that they wanted in the shop, whatever it might be. But if you actually understood the story behind that person, you'd be a lot more forgiving. You wouldn't look at them like a fucking idiot. You'd look at them like, oh, that's why he's doing that. Like, maybe, for example, someone that couldn't afford to pay for their shopping and they're screaming and shouting at shopping staff in there and giving out to them. But if you actually understood that they've been through maybe childhood poverty or struggle with certain things, you would be less critical of them. You'd be like, oh, right, that makes sense. That's why that person. And I think that's actually what we miss in a lot of things and issues in the world. I think that's what's missing. People don't see everybody's journey and pathways, and people are less understanding. But I think the most important part, and if anything, you need to become more understanding of yourself, and understanding your own journeys and your own struggles that you've had can lead you on to making better choices and understanding why you make certain choices in the future. And food is often a lot of part of that choice that we make. So rather than it being like, I'm overeating because I'm fat or I'm overweight, for that negative thing, which is, again, standing in a shop looking at someone who can't afford their shop and then screaming at everybody and seeing it as a bad thing, to actually understanding the story. So understanding the story for you would be like, well, I'm turning to food because I feel a little bit lonely and it helps me feel a little bit better, or it helps me feel less alone, or maybe it helps me sleep, or maybe it helps me get away from things, or I feel good with it. And when we can understand where those feelings come from, we can tackle the actual issue, which is the feelings. And then what will happen is the weight will follow suit and our health will follow suit with that. But thank you so much for bringing up there, because I didn't want to say it, because I know you brought it up in check-ins as well, but I think it's such an important topic to kind of discuss. So just starting with your journey, obviously, so let me calculate this for Americans that might be listening, because I know there's a good few. So what did we say? You went from 130 kilos down to 95 now. What kilo total is that?
That's around 25.
So 25 then in pounds multiplied by 2.2, my shitty maths, about close to 60 pounds. Let's say 55, 60 pounds. For any Americans that are listening to this, how did you attack that monumental amount of weight from a position where maybe you felt quite stuck? Because you talked about here where you ended up losing weight, going back up, losing weight, going back up. And I'm assuming when you went back up, it felt a little bit hopeless, and then looking at how much I have to lose or what I want to do. How did you start?
It's so corny because I'm going to go and say this again, but it really was like, it's a whole mindset thing, and it's the whole mental aspect sort of thing. And like I said, I'm such an advocate for it now, because it's just, I don't realize, and I don't think, unfortunately, a lot of other people realize like how much of your own mind can really play against you. And when I went back up to, my weight, 130 kilos, I ended up trying to go and approach myself in a kind of way. And I was just like, my weight's okay. People are going to love me, for who I am, and da 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 da. And I think I approached that in a good way. But I think deep down, I was just like, oh no, like, I don't know. I just don't feel comfortable, and it just made me, so it was just kind of like two different sides battling out against each other. And I really wasn't too sure even whether or not I really wanted to go and lose weight again, because to be honest, I thought I was going to be in the same sort of aspect again. But seeing the therapist, and the second thing is like, I didn't want to sacrifice what my current lifestyle already, which is food. I loved food. I always eat food. When my best friend comes in, we're both Philos. We're Filipino, and we love to eat food. That's how we connect, right?
Yeah.
And it's just like, how can I go out, and let me just go and say this one story. One time when I was in that sort of weight phase, I was like around 80 kilos. I was on holidays with my best friend. And I remember we had our last dinner before we'd go back home. And I felt so bad because it wasn't like a typical dinner. It was like a fucking Mexican restaurant or some shit like that. And I remember that I was just like, shit, I'm going over. I'm going to stuck on so much fat. I'm going to stuck on so much weight. But we were supposed to be enjoying our last dinner. I wouldn't see her for another, year and a bit, And so that sort of thing, I was just like, I need to find something where I can go and still incorporate food that I enjoy, but also just quite try and not be too indulgent into it. And so just kind of, watching your videos, it's hard to find a trainer or someone who's in this health industry who says that you can go and eat something and be proud of, and enjoy food, but then also be able to exercise and lose weight and shit. And so I joined I ended up followed your profile. I just randomly appeared out of nowhere, and I was just like, let's go and see what this person's all about. And I didn't sign up initially. I was just like, I was skeptical. And I was like, no, I don't think I don't think you're proving what you're really wanting to prove. So I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. But then since joining, and it shifted my mindset for starters, because I was like, okay, you know what? I can enjoy food. I can enjoy what I want, but just, being more kind to myself through it, and just really watching how I approach things differently. And so couple that with, my therapist, and changing the way that I see myself. And it just kind of made things different. And then, on top of that as well, going to the gym as well with my friend, it just kind of it's all just kind of gradually stacked on one another until it kind of snowballed into this whole thing of like, okay, now I'm just going and taking 1 week at a time, and then now it's just like, now I'm down 10 kilos, and et cetera, et
Yeah.
cetera. So
Huge. And I think like going back on a couple of things that you kind of touched on there. So like first of all, starting with something. So like tackling like the one thing at a time. As you just said there at the end is like you rather than focusing on this big massive journey that you have ahead of you, like what can you do today? I think that that's a huge thing that people need to kind of sit back and look at is like, right, I need to stop focusing on everything that I have ahead and let's just focus on like maybe can I drink a glass of water? Can I take one step forward today? And also another thing you did quite well, and for other people, recognizing that what hasn't worked for you and what way you want things to work for you and fitting it in. So rather than kind of someone telling you you need to do this, and this, because it's going to work differently for everybody. Even what I say might not work for people. If people find it really difficult to incorporate all of these sorts of foods within their diet, the way I preach things probably isn't going to work. Don't come and do my coaching. But I think for you, you highlighted that what is important to you is to go and have meals with your friends and not feel guilty about it. And that's something that you realized hadn't worked for you in the past and that you wanted to change. I think so many people don't critically analyze things like that. They kind of act off emotion of like, I'm feeling really shitty. I just want to lose all the weight now. Let's remove it. But critically analyze it like, I want to lose weight this time so that I don't end up flying back up to where I was before. Or what is the things that has caused me to regain weight in the past? I think that leads you to making the right choices because you base it off your previous decisions. And meanwhile, people are just like, oh, I want to get it off now straight away. And I think also people need to realize the more that you go up and down, right, the worse you're going to feel every time that you go back up because like, oh, I've got down to 80 kilos now. Now 130 is so much worse. I'm in a bad position. And you almost beat yourself up more than if you didn't just lose weight in the first place. So again, being careful with that sort of stuff is super important because it gets more difficult every single time that you go and regain all the weight to go and lose it. It can be quite difficult to get back down to where you were before because you already have all of these, again, losses that you've stacked up against yourself. Unless you've gotten to the position where we were speaking about even on the call, where now you are a lot less self-critical, where if you do end up regaining weight, you're not going to have this line of losses built up against you. You're going to be able to overcome that because you've proven a lot of stuff. And to jump again onto loads of things, you can jump in here and cut me off if you need to. The part you spoke about with regards to your body at the beginning of like, do you know, I want to be happy where I'm at 130 kilos. I don't think that that's a bad message. I think with regards to the body positivity movement and stuff, people can be quite attacking towards that because there's polar ends of the scale. People say one side, people say the other side. If you're body positive, whatever it might be, I think it's important. I think it's important to be okay with where you are now. And I think it's important to not beat yourself up over it because that's not going to promote change. But I think what is important is to always strive and be better in some regard, whether that be even improve your mindset, whether that be even go and lift a couple of weights. And you can't really fool yourself with that. Any people who are the body positivity movement who are telling themselves, oh, I love myself in the mirror and constantly repeating this over and over again, does that help to a certain aspect? It might help you stop being self-critical, but if you're unhappy with your current position, doing that isn't going to help you. What will help you is doing something to improve. So a good message to kind of throw out to people is sometimes having the chocolate bar or sometimes being that caring person and not making any change or taking a rest in and lying in your bed or watching the movies is self-care. But also sometimes getting up and going to the gym is self-care, even when you don't want to do it. Both sides of the spectrum are correct. But what we need to do with everything on planet Earth is meet in the fucking middle. People are polar ends of the scale, both sides. And do you know what happens with everything on Earth? This person shouts at this person shouts at this person. Nobody learns anything. Nobody takes a step forward. These people hate these people hate these people. And it just goes round and round in circles. And loads of people get caught up in that and get lost in it. And then when you're sat in the middle and you're trying to figure out which way is for you, should I be happy where I'm at? Maybe I shouldn't lose weight or I shouldn't do anything. Or you should lose weight because it's like, where the fuck do I stand here?
Yeah.
The answer is always in the middle somewhere. But with that
100%.
experience, have you gone through that as well? Like all the noise everywhere about everything?
Yeah, mate, fucking always. And, even right now, even though I've lost all this weight, I still am kind of like trying to pulled in either way of like, oh,
Yeah.
am I betraying myself? Because now I'm kind of like, oh, yeah, I've lost all this weight. Am I actually, am I betraying myself because I've lost all this weight, or should I actually just be, I'm just going to go and enjoy myself and just, embrace my body and be happy with who I am. And, it's just, I'm always pulled in either direction, and it's hard because it's, I think what you just said was really important, is that you are the only person that's on this planet right now. No one else really is like you. So if you feel like you're going to be pulled in either direction, you're only kind of like being pulled to, that aspect of that group or that person that you want to be like. But then you're not really being that, you're not really being true to yourself
Yeah.
about who you are. And I think that's a hard sort of thing to kind of grasp for a lot of people, because we always want to go and strive to be like that person that's on social media, or someone that you follow on YouTube, or a celebrity or something. And that's fine. It's great to go and have those role models and those people to look up to, but then it's like you can't really be that person, because that person has already taken up that space in this planet.
Yeah.
You have to be your own person that's right here now. I can only be the only Matthew right now, and you can be the only Shane right now. Sure, we may have, similar interests. We may kind of like go and either have the same sort of, things that we vibe on, or we maybe have some things that we don't necessarily agree on, or things that don't work. But like you were saying before, is that you kind of go and focus on what you need to go and focus on, and what works for you. And I think that's, like you just said, with being pulled in one direction and meeting in the middle. It's meeting in the middle and being true to yourself, and kind of
Yes.
doing things that work for you. And so, like I said, people who may be listening to this right now may be like, oh, no, fuck off, mate. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. That's cool. Awesome. Those people can be like, great, find something that works for you. And
They're
I think
listening to the
what
podcast.
my
They're not recording the podcast. So fuck them, Matthew.
but it's just, those sorts of things, really. It's just like, whatever, like do your own thing. But like, for me, when I go to the gym and I see these people who are like lifting heavier weights, or they're bench pressing so much, or they've got a different physique to me as well, that's such a different thing. And I'm like, oh god. And obviously I do have those thoughts where I'm like, god, I just, I don't look like them. I'm not like that. But then I try and remind myself, I'm like, okay, they're on their journey, I'm on my journey at the moment, and I've come a long way for myself, And so
Yeah.
that's what I try and go and do so often, is just remind myself where I am personally, and try and stick to that path, stick to that journey that I'm on, for as loyal as I can to myself, so that, I can just improve and grow more.
You asked the perfect question. It's so funny with this as well, because sometimes I fall into the trap as well of telling people what to do. My job as a coach isn't to tell people what to do or to instruct people. That's not coaching. And my good friend Lewis will preach to that all the time. What it is trying to figure out what's best for you. So like we talked about it just before here on the call about scale weight, getting to a certain scale weight and you wanting to get to 90 kilos. And I'd often put out on social media, and I'd often say to people in the group, it's not a good idea to have a scale weight number to reach. And that's not right for me to say, because when I was losing weight, I did have a scale weight number I wanted to reach. I reached it and it wasn't good. That's in hindsight. I can look back and do that. But I think it's important for everybody else to learn through hindsight as well. So I think that's where sometimes you can get caught up in like, this is the right thing to do. But for you, it might not be. And that's okay. So for you, it's like, oh, well, I want to try get down to the scale weight. Fine. You might get there and feel 100% fine. But like, that Ocean fella told me not to do this. And what a fucking idiot. And that's perfectly fine. But you might also touch the kettle and get burnt and be like, Ushin told me about that. But that's okay, because you will always learn better through experience than some cunt online telling you to do X, Y, Z. And that's where it's important to always be able to reflect and look back on, like you have so successfully over the last little while, of look at the things that haven't gone well for you, what changes you want to make, and stay true to you. And that's important, because it might be completely different to what everybody else is saying. And I think that that's what a lot of people struggle to deal with. But when you realize as well that you're the only person ever that you're going to spend 24 hours a day with, right? Everybody else, no matter, even if it's your partner, you might spend 18 hours a day with them, 19 hours a day. You do not want to spend time in your head 24 hours a day with somebody that's beating themselves up all the time. Don't want that to happen. And that happens when you don't stay true to yourself or do the things that you want. And you know what? In that, it's okay to change as well. It's okay to change your mind in certain things. It's okay that if you want to go and tackle one thing, you can go and switch to another. And this leads into the other thing we talked about before, the podcast was about goal setting, and this is where people can fall into that. Like, oh, I said I want to do this, and now I want to change. It's okay. Set a load of goals. Set as many goals as you fucking can, and then we can go and tick box them all. And you know what? It's class. Then you have loads of goals ticked off. And if that changes, if your goal changes every single week, write it down on a piece of paper. Have loads of goals, and then when you're uninspired by one, you can be inspired by another. And I think that that's where the journey becomes amazing, because a lot of people listening to this again aren't people that looking to be number one athlete. Like for me, when I train jiu-jitsu, I'm not looking to be the best jiu-jitsu athlete in the world. I'm just looking to have a bit of fun with it. For everybody here, is probably just looking to enjoy themselves a little bit more, have a bit of a better life. In that case, spread out as many goals and have as many experiences as possible. As we talked about before, patience is what we should change the goals for, things that you want to take off. And it's okay to have loads of those within your life and change them as well, and realize that, fuck, that was actually kind of shit. Like, do you ever see someone on maybe social media or that, and you're like, this person's kind of cool, and then you meet them, you're like, he's actually a bit of a fucking bollocks. That's kind of that's what kind of goals are. Sometimes you reach them, and you're like, yeah, what a fucking cunt.
100%.
That's okay to have. People will meet me and be like, I remember I got a message off some guy on online before, and he messaged me a picture of myself in the airport. So funny, randomly, just on my Instagram, randomly received like a photo. He sent a picture of himself, and he goes, "You look a lot more like an angry cunt in person than you do online." And I was like, I don't think I look angry online. I do curse quite a bit online, so I understand that. A little bit creepy you've decided to take out your phone and zoom in on my face and tell me how much of a resting bitch face that I have. I'll accept it. But we'll move on from this. Is when I first this is when social media actually started to really get to me at start, because I was like, fuck, actually I'm not just making videos to people in the camera anymore. I'm making videos to people. Like, whenever I make a video, sometimes I look at the camera and I'm like, oh, that's it. Like, it's just a camera. Then you realize actually when people see it, it gets a little bit scary. I'm like, shit, this is crazy. People know who I am. I prefer to just be a little bit quiet. So maybe my goals at social media will change at some time. But yeah, I suppose, because I have two other things kind of off the back of that, so we'll circle back around. But I want to go into that goal setting thing with you and your experience with goal setting, and maybe a bit of advice for people that have your view on it as well.
Mm.
It's a hard one.
I hate goals. It's hard because I hate goals.
Yes.
I hate setting goals, and it's like I can't do them, like, personally. And I don't know how much help I'm going to be in saying this, but it's just really personally, I just can't do them. Even way back since high school, when we had to go and write in our little diaries about stuff that we had to go and do, can't go and do that, And so for me, I try and
But you've achieved so much. You've achieved so much for somebody. Sorry to cut you off. You've achieved so much for somebody that doesn't like setting goals. So I think that this is where this is super important, because you've achieved. People listen to this podcast. I don't think you realize how much of a substantial achievement losing like 60 pounds is. I don't think you know how much of a substantial achievement it is even just stepping a foot in the door to do weightlifting. To then, what is it, 260 kilo leg press is the leg press that I seen maybe a while ago off the top of my head. If I have that correctly, my brain is a fucking genius. It's probably higher now, but I do remember a video where he had it on, and I'm pretty sure it said 260 kilos. And you're not the only person within the group, within the Mulligainz method, that tells me that they don't like goal setting. So I want this to be for all of the people exactly like you.
Yeah, I absolutely hate it. And I think what's kind of really, I guess, helped in a way to kind of get me to this space is not goal setting, but I think it's just group support with a lot of different people. And I think just having people around, especially in the group, where I can, post my concerns about things, as well as have people who are in a similar sort of thing. It's just the encouragement and the support. And I think that's what a lot of the base is just like the foundations, is just support from other people who've been in the same situations though as myself, and offer those encouragement words. But it's not just through the group, it's also through one of my really good workmates. And even before kind of starting the program this year, he mentioned this like a couple of weeks ago, but he's like, yeah, we've been going to the gym for like a year and a half, 2 years together. And I'm like, fuck off. No, we haven't. And he's like, yeah, we have. And he's just like, he's counting them, like saying, oh, yeah, no, this is when we met and da 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 da. And I'm like, holy shit. And, we never really kind of went like, 4 days a week to begin with or anything like that. We ended up just kind of going once a week together or twice a week, and so I think that's also another thing, is just to kind of have support, whether it be having someone with you to show up to the gym or to go with you for a walk, because it's as great as we can go and say that we rely on ourselves independently and we're the only person that we can talk to ourselves 24 hours a day, those thoughts. But then it's also those people around us who give and offer that advice and that support and that growth to be able to go and continue on down that path. And so that's what this group, the Mulligainz group, is so good about, is that we post things out and then we reach out and be like, hey, you can go and do this. This is why it's so good to go and have other coaches in there as well, to be like, no, this is what we can strive to go and look forward to, and what we can go and move forward with, and what you're doing well, and what we can improve on. And it's also why you've got great to go and have other people in real life, I guess, and like family members and friends who can go and say, are we going to go and hit the gym today? Or, what are you doing with your food and stuff like that? And my
Yeah.
workmate, it's like, I actually go and actively message him now. And I'm like, when are we going to the gym? Because he pushes me. Mate, you do not understand how much he pushes me. Like, I prefer to do leg day by myself. But when it comes to upper body, he's like the king. And
Yeah.
he like pushes me so much. He's like, this is what we're going to do. And we spent like an hour and a half in the gym. So if I were to go and do upper body stuff by myself, I'd be like, nah, mate, I'm done after 40 minutes. I'm exhausted. I'm only going to do 3 sets, 4 exercises. Yep, I'm all good. He's just like, push it out. And I'm like, yeah. And he's
And
like
it's
in the
working.
background going, come on, man. I'm like, yeah. So
And it's
it's so
working
good
too,
to,
because as I
yeah.
said at this, the fucking arms are popping out of the t-shirt now and everything, and
Yeah.
I'm like, I might have to hop on the same program as this guy. And I'm like, he's in my program. What the fuck is he doing? Why the fuck am I getting the same results as this? Like, what's going on here? But it's so funny. But that's so true, because for me, getting into the gym and enjoying it, like, it was me spending time with my older brother was where I started all of this, and I fucking loved it. So having that, like, I don't know what it is. It's like camaraderie and having someone that you go to the gym with and developing that. And
Yes.
everybody has somebody in their life that would love them to be involved with them too, like to be able to go to the gym together, do X, Y, Z. A lot of
Yeah.
people just need a little bit of encouragement, and sometimes that's the encouragement that people need. Of like, oh look, I'm struggling with this at the moment. Can we do it together? Do you want to try and come to the gym? Or as you said, like, it's a workmate, probably something that you mightn't have thought of asking before, and now the 2 years smashing the gym together. And I'm jealous.
Yeah.
So whenever I get over to Australia, tell him to have an upper body workout ready for me.
Oh, you're gonna love him. He's American, and he's done it so many times before. Like, he's really ripped. I'll send you a photo, but he's like jacked.
Sick.
And I'm like, and then someone messaged me, like one of my other workmates was just like, oh my god, he looks so jacked. He's like, he looks so built too. And I'm like, not like this guy. So let me tell you, he's like, there's one photo of him. He looks like absolute fucking Hulk. He's like posing. He's like, "Ugh," and I'm like, God,
Crazy.
does.
It's mad. What, like, this is another. It's so funny how we looped back around without me actually even meaning. It's funny how that worked. It's not that I'm an excellent podcaster and have questions together, because I just wing the shit out of this after. Simon thinks the best way to do life is wing shit out of it. But going into that of like looking like somebody else is often where someone comes from with regards to losing weight. And the reason this came up in previous, I think you were talking about your own journey, and you're talking about achieving things that somebody else has and how they live a different life, and everybody needs to approach things completely different. And it's the aspect of like, you and your friend could do the exact same workout program and achieve completely different things, and at the end of it you're going to look completely different as well, because a lot of people approach a weight loss journey of like, oh, I want those abs that I seen in this person. And it's not that you want to look different or you want to change you, it's actually that you want to look like somebody else. And I'm sorry to let you in on the fact of you're never going to look like somebody else. Like, you're never ever going to have the exact same muscle insertions. You're not going to be the same height. You're not going to have the same teeth. You're not going to be the same person. So what you have to start to do is really recognize yourself as a person that you want to love and change over time, or make improvements on, that kind of way. But I think in our minds, a lot of the time people want change, but it's like, it's changed. It's impossible. You're never ever going to look like somebody else. And that kind of is something that a lot of the world struggle with at the moment. And a lot of younger people, especially with social media and
Yeah.
magazines and stuff. So any experience with that?
Let me tell. I've got such a big experience for this. It's absolutely insane. So I'm a gay male, right? And so a lot of the that sort of community is really focused on looks. It literally is bombarded with you more or less 24 hours a day, especially if you're on like the dating apps and stuff like that. And even when you go out clubbing, if you go out to like one of those clubs that, with gay men and shit like that, there's guys around you who have their shirts off and they look infinitely times better than what you do as a person, as a regular average Joe. And that is one of the reasons why, years ago when I started, was because I was just like, I want to look like that person. I want to go and be able to have someone, I guess, like me or approach me because of the way that I look. Because if I look like that person, then I'll be able to get more attention. I'll be able to go and, go on more dates or meet people or meet these guys and shit like that. And so that was one of the big things, is just I was always surrounded. As soon as I, stepped out at legal age, just going out and meeting all these guys and stuff like that on dating apps and shit like that, bombarded 24. Like, that's absolutely insane. And, I think probably a lot of people, if they're heterosexual or whatnot, around listening to this and stuff like that, but just kind of having that imagery of someone who does have perfectly sculpted abs and chest to die for, or just like a lean figure, that's so challenging to go and see that and then look at your own profile and be like, I don't look like that.
Yeah.
It's something that is so difficult to comprehend unless you've been in that sort of community. And I think that was a really tough obstacle for me to kind of overcome, because of the fact that I was being bombarded so much. And that's why I think it's just such a great achievement for myself to kind of go and step away and or kind of like look at it in a different perspective, to be able to disengage myself from that, not from the community, but just to be able to disengage myself from, looking at those things, be like, okay, cool. They look like that and that's fine. That's who they are. But I look like this. I've got some, great things to go and offer on, on a personal scale, but, I guess on a physical scale too. I've got, great legs, and just trying to go and find things that I can kind
The
of,
arms.
focus on. Yeah. The arms are coming. Okay. Slowly but surely.
I have to stop throwing the compliments your way here now, Matthew. Everyone's going to get jealous.
Stop.
But yeah, I think that's super important, because a lot of people do approach, probably more people than you'd know, more female, I'd say, approach fat loss and fitness because of that. And it's not talked, like, I would have lots of calls with people, and it's an awkward subject to bring up, of like, oh, I'm changing because of my husband isn't going to bed with me or isn't sleeping with me anymore, or I don't feel attractive, or I'm looking at all these other women that he has on his Instagram and I'm not like those, or I don't look like those people. And the same for you as well with the dating apps, looking at guys with their t-shirts off and having abs and comparing. So there's a similar journey there. I think the gay community is probably more open about it. I think you're more able to talk about things, and probably better as well. I think it's a really, really hard topic to tackle as well, because I think a lot of it is kind of ingrained in us, and like, how much is it okay to look into looks in a relationship and not? And I think that's a fucking thing that you could nearly have a podcast on in itself. But I think in one thing that I've taken for myself, because I remember being back in school and back in starting college and stuff like that, I never got any female attention. I didn't have my first kiss until I was like, Jesus Christ, I don't even know what age, till really late on, in comparison to everybody else. And I always put the blame on my weight all the time. It was always something that I blamed. But I actually realized that by putting the blame on my weight and seeing myself as weight was the biggest issue, I stopped myself from things in the first place before things even happened. So I'd automatically assume that this person doesn't like me because I'm overweight, and I wouldn't put myself in situations to allow things like that to happen. And I feel like even in relationships, when maybe someone is not feeling as confident themselves, it's harder for them to take their clothes off and feel attractive, to therefore initiate going to the bedroom. This is getting really deep in here in this podcast.
Yeah.
But I think that's where something difficult. So it's like the outside person as well, the outside imagery can impact the inside of you and can leave you not even approaching situations like that and leave it really, really difficult. But I think one thing that's helped me is like, right, if I was to be in a relationship with somebody and the only reason I was in the relationship with them is because they liked the way that I looked, likely it is at some stage in my life, my body is going to vary. My body is going to change, whether it be when I have children, whether it be when we move house, or whether it be whatever happens. And do I want in the back of my mind that this person might leave me because my body has changed? fuck no. Can you imagine living with something like that? No. Yeah, straight away you're like, fuck, that would be a nightmare of a life of every second turning around and thinking, fuck, are they going to leave me because I changed the way that I looked and stuff like that? And I think that is so difficult. Yeah. So I think if you are holding yourself back from situations like that now and being like, I want somebody to approach me because of the way that I look, or I feel like people aren't approaching me because of the way I look, right? It's a gift. Realistically, it's a gift hidden as a negative thing to yourself of like, fuck, you're gonna find someone that really cares for you, rather than for the way that your body looks. And those people,
Yes.
like my therapist would often say to me, if you took a bag, right, and put all of the shit in your life into it and all of your lifestyle things and all the things that you do currently, and you put it in a bag and you fuck the bag into the room and everybody else had to do the exact same with their bag of shit and fuck in the room, I guarantee you'd open up your bag of shit and you take it back instantly. You'd be like, fuck it.
Yeah.
Even though everybody has individual hard things and difficult things, but do you know what? Even if I am a little bit overweight and I have more of a belly than most personal trainers do, I fucking love the way I live my life. Today I went in after we had a jiu-jitsu graduation and I went in and I had a steak sandwich, I had a Coke, I came back home here, I had ice cream. I think I was like, I have a podcast with Matthew at 7:30 here talking about fitness and health with people. But it's the thing that I would rather be in that situation rather than really afraid that, fuck, if I starve my body down to a certain amount, I'm stuck and I have to do this for the sake of getting a relationship. And not only that, then getting in a relationship with somebody and having to stay there in the nightmare realm
Yeah.
of then guessing if I change, they're gonna. So it is really, really difficult. And I'm glad you brought that up as well, because it's a fucking difficult conversation to have.
It is. It is. And it's so challenging because it's just like, how do you go and approach that from that perspective of like, trying to go and, whether it be a physical or a mental aspect. But I think you really did actually just kind of breach that subject. It was essentially, it should just be you as a person that they're enjoying. They should really be approaching you as a person about who they are as a whole, not just because of the looks and stuff like that. And like you said, we can go into a lot about this, about like, oh yeah, physical attributes, they like certain things, like 100%, and we'll get, so in depth. But like overall though, as a person, it should really be just who you are. And that's kind of like what kind of has approached me, with the exercise now as well, and being healthy is just like, look, I'm on my journey right now. I'm being healthy. I've got so much more energy now as a person. I am not as focused on, the dating apps and stuff. Like, I'm still on them, but I don't kind of, my sole focus and my sole energy isn't kind of contributed into those dating apps. But I'm not going to go and, I'm not going to go and say that I'm not the first person to go and fucking take selfies on me in the gym mirror and be like, oh yeah, it looks so fucking hot. Like, I do that, but it's because I personally feel like I've achieved something, and even though this is my third time around, like, I just feel better about it because I haven't sacrificed, I guess, who I am as a person, which is like food, because like that's so much part of me. I love food.
Taking pictures of yourself in the mirror, I don't think actually that is something that you should ever even have to explain. I think that's something that you should automatically just be like, yes, sick. I'm starting to like myself now, and I'm starting to like different aspects.
Yeah.
I like the way my arm looks in this. I think a lot of people, specifically, I think it's actually, I always say Irish people are very hard on themselves. I think everybody, to a certain aspect, is very, very hard on themselves and struggle with things. So when you're doing the opposite of that, why are you beating yourself up over trying to bring yourself back to a past you that didn't like the way that your arms looked or didn't like this? It's like, if we're sitting in the mirror, I take a picture and I post lots of pictures or upload new pictures of myself on my dating app of me in the mirror in the gym. Oh, fuck, I don't have to explain that to anybody. Yeah, I'm starting to like myself. I like myself a lot more than where I was a couple of weeks ago. And that's so important. I think human nature is that person shouldn't pop up and say things like this or shouldn't be happy. Right, do you want us to be fucking miserable? Do you want me to walk past the mirror and just be like, you're ugly? Or like, what way do you want me to live my life? It doesn't add up. And I think into this as well, the comparison, I think, is huge, right, on social media and rife. And this is a tip that I kind of give to everybody with regards to comparison. If you're going to be an asshole to yourself, right, be an asshole to everybody else. So I catch myself in this sometimes, and this is the way I deal with things. Again, might not necessarily be right. I might look back at this podcast in another 10 years time and be like, that Ocean fella hadn't a fucking clue
what did I do.
Yeah, I'll be ringing up Matthew and I'm like, Matthew, we need to get to the gym together. But if you're gonna compare upwards of like, this person has abs, this person has XYZ, this person is doing this, also please compare downwards, because when you're comparing upwards, you're beating yourself up, right? You're telling yourself XYZ over it. So you're gonna be an asshole to yourself, compare downwards and be an asshole to somebody else too. right? If you're going to do that to yourself, do it to somebody else. So if you're in a position where you're feeling really, really shit about your bench press and you're comparing yourself and someone's deadlifting 100 kilos or 200 kilos, think about your friend who hasn't even gone to the gym and is deadlifting none, is not doing anything.
Yeah.
And then it's like, now I'm getting further. So if you want to stop being an arsehole altogether, don't do any of that, right? But I think we're always going to compare, but we get caught up in the comparison of only what feeds us negatively, of like why I'm in such a bad position and why I'm really, really struggling. There's going to be thousands of people like listening to this podcast, Matthew, that are miles behind where you are, that haven't started the gym, haven't done anything. And that's something that they'll be comparing themselves upwards to. But yeah, if they compare themselves to a friend, you're listening to a health-based podcast trying to improve yourself. Most people don't give a fuck, and don't give a fuck until they end up in a hospital bed where something more is wrong with them. So I think that we all have that aspect to be able to compare, that we could be a little bit worse off as well. And I think a lot of people get caught up in that comparison aspect of it.
I think as well, just to expand on that, is the comparison of that as well, but it's just more sort of showing empathy as well for those other people. And I think it's like, like you said, if you're going to be an arsehole, just be an arsehole. But it's just like, why can't you go and show empathy and kindness to those other people who have not started yet? Because we don't know what they've been through. We don't know what's making it so difficult for them to either step outside of their house, let alone going to the gym. Or we look at someone else who may not look the same sort of shape they are, but they've probably come such a far way with, gym stuff, with weights and everything like that. And I think it's just, if you're going to be an arsehole, why can't you just show empathy and kindness? Like,
nice to everybody.
They're just, exactly. And that's how I sort of approach things. It's just like, whether it be someone who's older than me, or looks more overweight than I am, I'm not going to go and say that. Like, I actually do this quite often now, is when I'm in the gym and I see someone who's either like there's quite a few older people who go to the gym, and I'm like, that's so good on them. They're lifting weights. And there's this one guy there who's like lifting, like doing these, pull-ups. And I'm like, oh my God, that's like 10 times heavier than I can go and do. Like, seriously. And he's older.
That's what starts to happen.
It's crazy that, and that's what something is great for them, because, it's all about the mobility as well. And, for someone who's also maybe a bit larger than, myself, I'm just like, they're getting into the gym, and, I think that's such a great thing. And I think that's what, if anything, we should be going to doing, is just being empathy, showing empathy, putting yourself into their shoes about like, they're doing great. I don't want to go and either compare myself to them or bring them down, or, bring myself down to their level. They're on their own journey. Their own path. I'm on my own, but good on them for doing whatever they're doing.
Yeah, because that comparing downwards to somebody else and you being like, oh, I'm further on than this person, and actually realize that the negative things that you don't want to say to somebody else, you're saying to yourself all the time. Yeah. And so it's that aspect of being like, fuck, I actually wouldn't say that to this person, or I wouldn't say that to this person, or if I seen that person, I'd actually be like, you're doing an unbelievable job. But then why aren't you saying that to yourself? So like taking part in the exercise of forcing yourself to compare downwards will actually make you realize that, fuck, I don't like doing that to other people, so why am I doing it to me now? And also in that comparison aspect where you're talking about there with like getting stuck in like, oh, this person is doing this person is doing this. The gym is actually the best place to find people that struggle with that, or that are really, really struggling with their kind of the way they view themselves, or really finding it harder to get confidence. Because why does anyone start going to the gym? They want to change something. They want to try and improve in some manner. So you're actually in a room of people who don't feel fully confident in themselves in some aspect of their lives, or in some aspect. So you're actually in a room full of caring, empathetic people. So when you're in there, a lot of people see the gym as a negative place. I actually see it as the opposite. And a lot of people would see people who have stringer tops on that have loads of muscles as arseholes. But I'd actually look at them and be like, fuck, they're actually people exactly like me, because they're probably a little bit self-conscious too, and they're proud of the progress that they've made. I think that that's so important, and it's brilliant. Yeah. And you know what it is? Those people that actually probably care a lot more than the people that don't do anything about themselves. Or I think that that's where people get stuck, of being like, oh, if I go to the gym, I'm going to feel really overwhelmed, or people are going to look at me as if I'm stupid. I guarantee you people will look at you as like, how can I help this person out? How can I make them feel more comfortable? And how can I do X, Y, Z? And if there's someone is in there that is maybe a little bit more quiet, or a little bit more of an asshole, they're probably going through some shit in life too and finding things difficult, and their gym, the gym is their safe space. Nobody goes to the gym to purposely beat up on people and be like, this person's useless, this person's bad. Everybody kind of wants to improve themselves. And in that, a lot of people that really struggle with their own self-confidence are generally people who put others first, right? Who put others ahead of them. So when they're in the gym and they're looking at you doing stuff, they're actually probably just thinking, geez, how can I help that person out? Or how can I do this? And XYZ, like, because everybody that has been in there started at some stage as well. But like for you, being in the position that you are, where you're deadlifting or leg pressing your 206 kilos. Someone walking in the gym might be like, shit, that's scary, that's crazy, I could never do that, and then sit on the machine and feel useless. But then actually you turn around, you're like, what tip can I give him to have this that way? I think it's amazing. And everybody starts somewhere. Like you would have started off with the empty. What is it still too? You haven't done it in a little while because I do believe you had an injury, but is it still high? What is it now?
Yeah, it is. I think you're going to have to go and calculate, but I currently did, I think it was like 170 kilos or 180 kilos yesterday.
Yes, mental. And that's in the space of such a short period of time. When you think about it, right? A year and what did you say you're in the gym? A year and a half? A year?
Year and a half, maybe 2 years.
Yeah. Yes. So that's not even that long of a time within the gym to make those massive improvements on weight. And I'm actually thinking like, I think I have touched a 200 kilo leg press once in my entire training career, and I've been training for like 10 years now. I'm actually so
Wow.
you're miles ahead of me. It's just crazy. So all your lifts are going to start surpassing me. And I'm like, right, from here on out, Matthew, you're going to be lifting coach of the group, please God.
So fucking
You'll have
funny.
very deep people. But I suppose going on your whole entire journey, and I think it's important for people that maybe are in a similar or in position to where you started. What is the best piece of advice you'd maybe give to somebody? I know this is a really hard question because you're like, oh, there's so much, but if you could just pick one or maybe a quote or something like that that maybe helped you out at the very beginning of your own journey to maybe help somebody who's trying to start now.
I say this to some of the new people that have started, and I feel that it's also helped me in some way. But it's just do something. Set yourself a time limit. One of my friends gave this to me, and I'm like, oh, this actually works. But yeah, set yourself like a time limit for how long you want to be in the gym for, or do that particular exercise, whether it be going out for a walk or, going to an outside gym or something movement. Set yourself a time limit of going, say, I'm going to go and do X movement for 10 minutes. And then once I've done that for 10 minutes, then I'm done. I've achieved what I wanted to for today. And I guess that kind of, it's weird that it kind of like goes into like a little bit of a goal-based area when I fucking say that I hate goals so much. I'm like, oh my God. But that's really helped me is because for 10 minutes out of your day, you went out and did something. And you have 10 minutes or 15 minutes to go and say, okay, I've done something for 10 or 15 minutes, whether it be like the lowest weight or the like the lowest cycle on bicycle, just do that for 10 or 15 minutes. And if you aren't vibing it, if you just say, okay, I just don't like the way that I'm feeling, or I'm done, I'm tired, then say, okay, cool, you can leave. You've given yourself that option, but you want to go and get yourself for 10 or 15 minutes there just to go and get you started. And then sometimes you'll be like, oh, I'm already here. Let's go and push it out. But I think what it allows you to have is that opportunity, that option to get yourself out there if you're not feeling it. But you have gone and set foot into that. You've done something for that day. You've gone out, and whether you walked or taken the car, public transport, whatever it is, to get to that movement-based thing that you're doing, I think that that's really helped me. And, when I first started, and this is even before I joined with you, when I did it with my mate by myself as well, but I ended up going in and I was just like, I had to gear myself up. I had to seriously gear myself. So I was at my home by myself. Another mate that I used to go and do it with, he kind of like opted out, and I was like, oh shit, now I have to go and do it by myself. And I was sat there. I sat here in this chair. Let me tell you, I sat here in this chair, and I was just like, oh God, okay. It's just 15 minutes. Just 15 minutes. You can go and do it. And I put on my shoes. I put on, my gym stuff. And I was like, just 15 minutes. Just that's all you're doing. And I had to really, really psych myself up for that. And then I'm like getting my shit. And I'm like, oh God, okay. And I did it. And I went in and I did 15 minutes. And I was just like, okay, I'm here. let's go and continue on. And I did it at the lowest setting I could possibly do, but I did it for 15 minutes, and then it ended up being 30 minutes. But there were times when I've gone in and I think I was like, I said, oh, I'll just do 15 minutes, but I just wasn't feeling it. I think I was tired or whatever. And I was just like, oh, you know what? I'm done. I'm going to opt out, but I've done something for myself today. So that's a little bit of a ramble about what you want to go and do. But
I think such an important thought, because I think so many people struggle with that, just doing something. As I love, like, you've actually come out with so much. This podcast is going on ages, because I think I guarantee we're going to put this up, right? And there's going to be about 50 comments being like, can you get Matthew on to do another one? And I'm going to have to horse you to come in, because I think there's so much that you've touched on and so insightful to a lot of the things that you've spoken about. It's going to help out so many different people. And even in that, like, the 15-minute rule is something that's so important. It's just doing something for yourself, essentially giving yourself a time limit so you feel free to then go after. Huge. And it's going to be so beneficial for those people that feel so overwhelmed with it, because sometimes an hour and a half workout can feel so overwhelming to fit within your day. Then it's like, we don't worry about any of that. Can we just do 5 minutes? Can we just do the 15 minutes? And the analogy that kind of came to my head with that as you were speaking is like, do you ever see those big massive jars with pennies? I don't know if this is an Irish thing, where it's like just full with like copper pennies, or like, I don't know where people get them. Yeah, they're huge. Like, people throw them in. Like, I remember going into my dad's wardrobe when I was younger. It was like a place that you weren't allowed to go because he had like a gun cabinet. There was never a gun in it. I don't know what was in there. Yeah, it was in here, but he always had like jars of pennies. And so my thought of that was like, Jesus, it's like that. It's like putting a penny in the jar. Just put one penny in the jar each day. Anything. And it might be, a penny in the jar might be just showing up at the gym. And the thing is, you have a choice of whether in 10 years' time or in 20 years' time, you want to have a jar full of pennies, or you want to come back and then have to start putting the jar in, or having to start putting pennies in the jar now. So whether you do something today or you don't, you have to make a choice whether in 10 years' time you want a jar full of pennies or you want no pennies, and just putting one in every single time. My brain works great. Just as you were speaking there, why was I even thinking about my dad's fucking wardrobe with pennies? I don't know. I haven't a clue. But I think that's so important for people to take. Yeah, that's such a huge thing for people, because it can feel overwhelming.
I think it adds up. Like you said, yeah, it does feel overwhelming, but it adds up over time. And like you said, with your analogy with your dad's, coin jar, where it just adds in, he probably started it when it was fucking empty. There was nothing in there. And then he's like putting those pennies in, and then now it's like $100 or whatever it is, And I think that's what it is over time.
You could just got $100 somewhere else. So you could just got $100 from the fucking bank account. But doesn't matter. He still he achieved something. He did something hard. It's hard to fill a jar full of pennies.
100%. And it's just as hard as to go out of your own place or even in your own place and do exercises in your own thing. But it's really, if you did 10 minutes like every 3 days or 2 days, that's 20 or 30 minutes of exercise that you've done for that week. And that's better than doing 0 minutes over 7 days. And I think you've touched upon this, and I think this is also kind of like, elaborating in general as well. But it's just like, it doesn't have to be the gym. If you're going to go 10 minutes down to the grocery store to go and get some groceries, that's 10 minutes walk there, or if you decide to go and opt for public transport, and then, you have to go and get off at an earlier stop or something like that, that's a 15-minute walk to get to work. There's a lot of options. I don't think people I think you shouldn't limit yourself to just the gym, because I think that's probably what a lot of people decide to, and that's me as well when I first started as well. But it's just like, everyone's like, okay, to lose weight or to be healthy, gym. And it's just like, well, no, there's lots of different options there as well. We've discussed this in my thing, my check-ins, but like, I've done pole dancing before, and I've gone on and off pole dancing, but pole dancing is crazy. There's a lot of upper body strength there as well. But, you've done jiu-jitsu, that's cardio, and there's lots of, strength stuff as well. There's self-defense classes where it's actually just geared just self-defense for, if it's for females and even men as well, where it's just like, you're exercising, but you're also learning a valuable skill. Or if it's, fucking golf or something, I don't know. Like there's movement in anything, because you're walking around on the greens at golf. Like, come on. So seriously, it's just, I don't think people should limit themselves to the gym, and obviously the gym is like a great space to be able to go and do all that movement. But it's just, yeah, there's ways you can go out and accumulate all that exercise and that movement around, and it doesn't have to be just one specific
Gym.
space.
Yeah, and it's so funny. Whenever what you said golf, I always come out with a random one like pogo stick, and I don't know why it always comes as perfect. Anyone's like thinking of a random exercise, I always think of pogo stick. I don't think you even do a pogo stick class. I don't know, but it's
Yeah, it's good.
you touched on something amazing there as well, as like the wins and the pennies in the jar might not be the same as everybody else's pennies in the jar. For example, like sometimes the penny in the jar will be getting up and having a shower on a day where you're feeling really shit. That's hard to do. I find one thing I've always done. I'd have a shower because I smell so bad. I need to do that regardless. But like a step for me might be getting outside for a walk. For somebody else, it might be putting on the runners. For somebody else, doing like this. This is a win. That's a penny in the jar. And some days it's going to be like that. Some days you will wake up with a task that would usually be lesser to you, but you find it harder because you've less energy or things are harder or more stressful. Like, as you said there, some days you find the gym easy. Sometimes you find it difficult. Sometimes you might even find it difficult to just cook food for yourself rather than do anything. But try and get these 1 pennies in every single day. And I think it's that understanding that maybe somebody here listening to this might be in that point where they're really struggling to get out of a room. And so your first call of action is, right, what's the first step? Can I take the blankets off me? Can I sit up? Can I brush my hair? Can I do my nails? Can I do something? And just put 1 penny in the jar for yourself each day. And that penny is going to look different. Sometimes, as we talked about even earlier on, we touched on pretty much Jesus, everything. If people listen to this podcast, the amount of stuff they're going to take from it. But that aspect of like, sometimes the penny in the jar will be going and getting yourself a takeaway. Sometimes the penny in the jar will also be not getting the takeaway and going to the gym. And I think that that's super important for people as well to realize and to be that that kind of balance. It's almost that balance of both sides of the coin work for you. There's another analogy, both sides of the coin work for you. But anyways, yes, before we finish up, is there any last things you want to fire across to anybody or anything that you thought about before jumping on the podcast or anything like that? If there's none, we can just say there's none.
There's no, I like seriously. I think we, like you said, we've like touched almost on everything, and I feel
Crazy.
like now I'm like in this groove now, and I'm like, all right, what's the next thing? They're gonna go and talk to me, and I'm like, I'm ready to continue on. And it's like, you got.
I swear to God, I could probably speak to you on this for ages, Matthew. I think you, as I said, I'm going to say this as well on the podcast. I think you have a bright future in helping people out. I don't know how that's going to manifest for you or however, but I'm predicting it, whether that be even within your own gym, seeing people in there and giving a bit of feedback or giving a bit of support. I think the work that you do within the Mulligainz method push people on as well. And I see it all the time is fucking amazing. Everybody appreciates it as well. It's funny with the Mulligainz method because we do the private check-ins. Sometimes you guys don't actually realize that you're getting positive feedback from other people because they just slide in and be like, actually, Matt, you really helped me out this week. Or actually, Joe really helped me out this week with this. And you don't even realize how many people you're actually impacting by doing something positive throughout the day or doing something positive. There's a nice message for everybody to take home. So just, I suppose, do something positive for somebody.
Yeah.
That's going to be a fun
empathy to others. Yeah.
Yes, there you go. I think that's amazing.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I can guarantee I'm going to get asked, can you come on for a part 2? And thank you so much for spending a bloody hour and a half talking to this stupid Irish cunt the other side of the ocean.
It was amazing. I loved talking to you, mate. It was awesome. I actually really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you.